and welcome to the BWI Show. Today I'm here with Kristian Roberts and Quodesia Johnson. So thank you guys for joining me today. Can you start off by telling me about yourselves?
You want to? I'm Kristian Roberts. I am, I currently reside in Dallas, Texas, the DFW area. I am the Director of Education for Dallas Opera. I serve on a few boards and committees here in this area. I am also a member of the Dallas Opera Chorus. I have a degree in vocal performance from Baylor University and a master's degree in vocal performance from Southern Methodist University, with additional studies in music history. That's the basic gist of where I am right now.
Kristian, can you just describe your job a little bit more? Because I always want to know what that is, like doing education.
So basically what I do is I oversee K through 12 programs. We have about 9 programs, although that is rapidly changing with the state of COVID. So we're in the process of doing virtual programming right now, planning virtual programming. But in a normal year, I oversee a team of education and outreach artists, which are responsible for performing in schools, community organizations, different places. We also build full curriculum with all of our education programs, including both of our children's operas that we tour each year, and also workshops. So, and then we also invite older students to dress rehearsals and through a free ticketing program called TDO Sightlines, which, if you know anything about the Windsor Opera House here in Dallas, there's it's in a European horseshoe shape. So it's a running joke in the just amongst ourselves, music people, we make ourselves giggle. And so we call it the Sightlines program, the free ticket program, because it's the side of the horseshoe that's kind of, you kind of lean over and look at the stage. It's restricted view. Yeah. But we offer those free to middle and high school students and college students. So it seems to work out pretty well. I always joke, I said they're young, they can handle doing a little lean. Okay. But yeah, it's one of our popular programs. But yes, that's in essence, when people ask me what I do, I say I bring students to the opera, or I take opera out to the students with a huge team, which Ms. Johnson is most definitely a integral part of.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. I was definitely one of those people, every time they had those cheap tickets, I'm from Mississippi. So I was right over there until I couldn't do it no more. I was there.
Yeah, I think it's really vitally important. I think people need to understand that, there are college students who are struggling. That's the one thing I will say is that, one of the things that I often hear, and it was my motto and the motto of many of our board members and stuff like that, that cost and all that should not be a reason why a student or a child is not being able to be engaged in the arts, or at least introduced to the art form.
Right.
So it's that, we worked a long time on that. So yeah, it's an interesting job. I love what I do. It's quite challenging right now, given everything that's going on. But I personally am a person who loves, doing mentoring. And so I get to do some of that. I get to be creative. I also have to do the administrative side, which is, sometimes very, very challenging. But, I'm fortunate that I'm in a place where I get to stretch my creative wings in addition to doing the administrative work. So, truly grateful,
Yeah, I like that.
I'll stop babbling now. It's Quo's turn.
I am Quodesia Johnson, or Quo. I answer for either. I am the Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera. I am originally from Dallas. I graduated from the Prairie View A&M University with my bachelor's in music, minor in business administration. So I've always wanted to be in arts administration. I've always wanted to connect people through the arts. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. I am a classically trained pianist. I also play other instruments, visual artist, spoken word artist, all art, those things. And I'm currently getting my master's in arts administration from Goucher College. It's a low residency program, which allowed me to continue to work and to continue to build on the work that I've done and that I continue to do while also earning my degree. I worked for the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and the Dallas Opera simultaneously for like 7 years. So I was working every day, hustling for real. So that I could have that experience, and then so that I could have that kind of community and that network and those things that are necessary in this field. My role for the Dallas Opera as education and company culture manager, as Kristian said, I work very closely with Kristian, been working with her since I've been working for the Dallas Opera as a member of the education department. And so all of the programs she mentioned, I help manage those, coordinate all of the kids coming to us, all of the students coming to us going out to the students and those performances and what that looks like, as well as building those relationships with the teachers, with districts, with other education organizations. So it's a really rewarding experience just to kind of see how all of that comes together, which is one of the few things about arts administration, especially in opera, where we can actually see it happen. My company culture role is a brand new role created by our general director. I believe it's probably the only one in opera. There are similar roles, but it's my role, my pleasure, my responsibility to look at the practices, the policies, everything that we do in the organization so that we can make sure that we're creating a culture that is inclusive, a culture that is collaborative, a culture that is truly considerate of others, so that we can actually do what we need to do in the best way possible. And it's a matter of looking at the practices we've been led to believe that we've accepted are good practices, white supremacy culture norms, and making sure that we are looking at why we're doing things the way we're doing them. And then going through the process of saying, well, that doesn't help us, that doesn't serve us. What different steps can we take to make this organization better? What steps can we take to be more transparent? What steps can we take to be more inclusive of others? And that is also fun.
That sounds really cool. That sounds like a freaking dream job, honestly. Like, did you already have like a model from your previous experience, or are you just kind of making this out fresh?
So I do racial equity and racial healing work. And that's work that I'm committed to doing outside of arts administration. So outside of my roles with the symphony at the time, and outside of my role with education for the Dallas Opera. And because of that, we decided to shape this position so that it utilizes those skills and my expertise and my experience in that field, and then allowed me to kind of start to create a framework. So I am creating a company culture framework, or building on a company culture framework that I created. And then Dallas Opera is honestly my case study, as well as my place of employment. So it's interesting to kind of be in the center of it, and then suddenly to shift roles so that I can start to apply those things. So it's all me creating this framework based on my knowledge, based on my experiences, based on my expertise, based on my education, and then my role within the company.
Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, like when I heard y'all talking together and you were describing your job, I was like, oh my God, I could definitely do that. Because I worked with the William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation for a long time. I got my degree in Southern Studies. So I always was doing like social justice work, civil rights history, and stuff like that. I liked it. It was a lot. It is a lot, and especially in the culture of Mississippi. It's a lot of community building, a lot of building bridges, and I don't know if maybe I'm a little bit too militant. I don't know, but it's a lot.
Need that sometimes.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but I feel like that's like a super dream job to like bring that to opera. Is a space that really, really needs it, because I feel like opera is like 200 years behind on what everybody else is doing.
Well.
Just like I don't understand why we are here at this point. So, but I'm glad that
what I'd say we are that behind. Symphony, ballet, everybody's kind of moving. Symphony is not moving as fast. Ballet is trying to get there. Ballet has had more spotlight in making sure they get there as well. Symphony, not so much. And then opera museums everybody's still struggling. With the opera, because it's the combination of all those things, I feel like there's so many different aspects and so many different facets that you have to get to, right? You got to go work with the orchestra, but then you have to make sure you work with the artists, and then you have to make sure you work with all of the stagehands and the costume and everything else. Just because there are so many different arms and legs, I understand why we're a bit behind. It does not excuse why we are as behind as we are, though.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess, because there's so much art going into it.
We still got to get it together.
Yeah, I just feel like it's so interesting. I think Julia Bullock was talking about how we're supposed to be at the forefront of these discussions. We'll be at the forefront of showing the world of a place that we can imagine that is inclusive. And I guess because opera is such a classical art, I think the way we frame opera is just so white centered a lot of the times, and I just feel like it's terrible. And I was talking to Kristian a little bit about like even the education of opera is really, really white. And I mean, I can remember reading in my music history books, and I'm just like, the teacher's telling me something, and then the book is telling me something else. It really has created a foundation for these type of issues, this type of insensitivity.
I'll say to that point, particularly on the education side of things, Quo pointed out to me, she said, you've run the department through an equitable lens. And to me, there was really no other way to do it. Like, I couldn't really think of other way to do it. Like, that just seems like it was called for. But there are times when I've been sitting in meetings with different groups of people where that seems like it's a foreign concept. And I honestly do not believe it's on purpose. I've told Quo this, I don't think it's on purpose, but there are systems that have been in place for so long that it's considered the norm. And when you sit back and you kind of look back at them and you go, wait a minute, who said that we had to do this way? It doesn't even make sense. So when she talks about white supremacy cultural norms, that's some of the things they're touted as business practices. Mm-hmm. And you're like, this doesn't quite sit right. Why on earth are we doing it like this? So
when it happens, it didn't sit right. It doesn't feel right, but we just kind of keep going because that's what we're told is what makes us better.
It's what you're supposed to do. Yes.
That's what makes you a professional. That's what makes you. That's what allows you to excel above others. It's like you don't feel right doing those things. You don't feel right
tough
having
skin.
those things done to you.
Yeah.
You gotta have tough skin, got thick skin, and all this stuff. And I'm going, wait a minute, like. So it's interesting that this conversation is happening right now because I always say if you want to look where there's some of the biggest gaps and disparities and inequities, look in education, look in our education system.
Right.
And I'm not making this up. I got a lot of teachers who will line up and tell you the issues that they face, and that the students face. But we have to realize that came from somewhere.
Right.
And so when we talk about that, and then we say all the time, Quo said, a few years back, this is just not just an opera problem. Mm-hmm. Whatever is happening in society is going to be happening in opera. And it's a Eurocentric art form, but we're in the United States where this is supposedly a melting pot,
right?
And we're just now having conversations about how to make sure that that's reflected in our staffs, in our orchestra, in our choruses, and our principal artists, stage managers, stage directors, the entire creative team, and such. And so I will say this has been an interesting time for this. I know personally working side by side with Quo on this and watching the kind of environment she has been working so hard to cultivate around this subject. I think and I have to give a shout out to our general director, Ian Dara, for taking the step and saying we need to do this, and getting somebody who knows how to do it into that position to be able to do it. Because it is and now it's more important than ever. Like this happened, she moved to that position last August. Mm-hmm. But but it's like it needed to happen, and we're seeing right now just how on fire this nation is right now. And I think it's past time to be having these conversations. Like I say all the time, we've been having these conversations. This has been happening. Some of us have been having these conversations for 400 years, So I'll just say that about it. So, I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, and I didn't mean to, but I need people to understand that the work that Quos does within our company and even out in our community, particularly towards this role and these types of issues and topics, the subject matters. It is vital. I mean, it's absolutely vital,
and it's
particularly
necessary
in a time such as this. Yes.
Because, as she said, like opera is not exempt. This is not just an opera problem. And for some reason, people assume that, if you bring in somebody into your organization to kind of teach some things, do some trainings, sensitivity trainings, things like that, that's supposed to adjust anything when you walk out of this space and you're still affected by everything else. Or when you bring everything in that has been affecting everything else back into the space, it's not enough for that. It has to come from the inside out, and it has to be mindful, and it has to address all of the other things that we face outside of the workplace, outside of the stage.
Right.
Because ultimately we bring those mentalities, we bring those expectations, those biases, we bring those things with us to the work that we do. So it's a matter of, I got all of y'all in this space right now. We're going to tackle this right now. Take it out with you.
And it's so
Take
unique
it out,
to
bring it back.
Right. It's so unique to have like the South as I guess being at the forefront of this discussion, because we typically think of the South as the more racist part of America. We just reflect America in a different way. We're not very covert with it. But I just feel like the South being this place where, especially like Dallas, which is, I feel like, very multicultural. It's very, I guess, the globalizing cities, one of those in the South. Like being at the forefront of having discussions about being more culturally exclusive. I think that that's very unique, and it can really set the tone for other opera companies throughout America.
And with that, she gave a shout out to Ian Dara, who is our general director. I have to give a shout out. We both have to give a shout out to David Lomali, who to his brainchild, TDO Network. He's like, I got this crazy idea, and he approached us with the show. So taking the stage with Kristian and Quo is something that we created, but it came about because David was he came to us and said, I want y'all to have a show. We have a platform, we have social media. I'm putting you out there, talk about whatever you want. Talk about the things you're passionate about. We've had discussions, we talk all the time, go and share that with other people. So I have to give a shout out to
real.
David.
Wow, that's amazing.
He's like, and I don't care what you talk about.
Just make sure it's real. I mean, that was as far as he was like, I want y'all to talk about the real, Okay. So and then at that point, this is right when that Rona hit. And so we ended up having a conversation, and Quo was like, well, Kristian, I have a framework laid out. This is something I wanted to do. I said, you got a framework already? Okay, let's go.
Right.
Because she and I always talk about these kind of topics just amongst ourselves and amongst our peers and at different trainings that we've been to for racial equity and this sort of thing. And so and people hear us talk, and they would always say stuff like, y'all should have a podcast. Like we would get on something, y'all should have a podcast. Don't forget, y'all should have a show. And then here's David presenting us with this idea and saying, what do you guys want to talk about? And we were like, Quo was like, Kristian, I have some ideas. I have a framework. Well, I said, well, you already have. Okay, well, it makes no sense for me to even say, let's go. Right. So she's the show writer. She gets the top. We talk about the topics we want to talk about. She lines them out. We talk about our networks and the people we want on. And she always jokingly says, I just invite my friends. But it's people from both of our networks, like people that we know in common, people that we know separately. But she was like, I'm just doing a show with my friends. But within that, there are people, but within that, we know these people from different organizations and different titles and positions and different backgrounds, how important it is to have those different kinds of perspectives. And then the way she just has laid it all out, I mean, there's a method to the madness, and it's fun. It's good working with her. And we have sat on the phone last week. We were on the phone for 6 hours, just talking about everything, and just trying to, work out some of the stuff that we've seen over the past 3 or 4 weeks, particularly in the industry.
Yeah.
And I need to be very clear about something. I've been in opera a long time. I love the art form. I think it is beautiful. I mean, when you come through and you're listening to people like George Shirley and you know, Franco Corelli and Leontine Price and Jesse Norman, and you know, if you can't tell, I'm a contralto, so Marian Anderson, you know, was just like, whoa, you know, when I first heard her, I was like, you know, I was like, okay, I'm not a freak of nature for having a voice this deep. You know, here's a woman that had a low D. I have one too. Yes, you know. But I think that's what is important. But it's to me, I actually got to go see those things and I explored those things, and some people told me about these things, and I was able to go and look for them, you know, on my own. Here's the problem with in education though, and in particular music education, we don't talk about the Black music history, and if we do, it's just, you know, a chapter or something. Yeah. There has to sometimes be specifically a history of jazz course, which I have taken, you know, and things like that. Right. And so the entire time I'm learning, you know, music history, I'm learning another set of music history from people that look like me.
Right.
And so I think we have to understand. So when I say inequities and disparities, it's down to the roots of the curriculum, even in a music school where you're training to be a vocalist, training to be an instrumentalist, training to be a music historian, training to be a composer.
Right.
So so when we talk about it, we have to understand that it goes really, really deep, and I don't believe people really realize how layered it is. Because it's like, you know, we were there too, you know, when Mozart was composing, we had somebody over in France, you know, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, he was composing too, you know. Yeah. But all of his operas are lost. You know.
I feel like I went to HBCU, and even we had a lot more than you would get at another type of school, but I feel like running my page has taught me much, much more about opera. And specifically about Black opera singers than I've ever learned in my entire life. Because you just fall on these different names, like, oh, this person had a different type of career, and this person made this thing happen, and they were the first to do this, and it's like, how did I not know about these people? And
by design.
I mean, it's something else.
Because one of the things that we're always in restorative justice, in racial equity, racial healing work, is the narrative, the importance of the stories that we tell, the importance of the stories that are told to us, because that shapes kind of how we view and how we see else that we're doing. So if they purposely leave out certain things in the narrative, you purposely leave out stories. If you did that when we were kids growing up, you know, by the time we get to college, that narrative and that perspective is still what's controlling so much of the things that we learn. So I think it's important that we start to break or reshape or complete those narratives. We start to tell the full story, because so often it's the separate theme, the selective, this extra you got to learn over there. All these things will happen simultaneously. This is the history. What we've been learning is a partial truth, which makes it a lie. And so
you can say it's an exaggeration, a partial truth. It's a lie.
Yeah. Point blank and period.
You only tell part of the story, and then you didn't tell it right. And so, or you only told it from one perspective, which shapes who plays what role, as we assign the roles of those who are important, those who are worthy, those who are problematic, those who are criminals, those who are villains, those who are heroes. We assign those roles. If you're only telling it from one perspective, then you're doing yourself and everybody else an injustice. And so I think a lot of what's going on right now is kind of that realization that the narratives that we have and that we've been told, they're incomplete.
Yeah. And that there's a lot of questioning now. People are starting to question the narratives and the things they weren't taught, and they're having to do some self-examination and some inner examination, which you should be doing during a time like this. You should have been doing. But you're having to do some examination and go, well, if they didn't tell me about this, what else am I missing? And I've actually heard people say that. They're like, I can't believe this. You know, even the whole Juneteenth thing. Everybody, I can't remember not celebrating Juneteenth. So it's always just been around. And I had a buddy that said, you know, he said, was it just a Texas thing? I said, man, I don't know. I really cannot remember not celebrating it. And so I think it's important that we remember that even just recently, what we're seeing, people being informed about Juneteenth and about a holiday, and you know, Black people are just like,
we've been here.
That was, we had a parade, and I come from a really tiny town, McGregor, Texas, and there was a parade going down my street that I lived on, the Juneteenth parade. We rode our bikes in the parade one time. It's that sort of thing. So I think we need to, when we think about that, like Quo said, it's everywhere, and it's been woven into everything,
right,
deliberately. And so when it's done like that, you cannot think that the arts are going to be exempt from that, that deliberate leaving out of things.
Right. And I just feel like even with even when you think about monuments and like placards that are dedicated to African American history, it's like what happens to that history when the demographics of that city change? Like how do we continue to cover up the place that Black people have had in this America, in America. And it's so interesting to see that happen, especially like I live in DC now, and like I've been here for like 5 years, and just to see, you can literally just watch the transformation. Like you can see how people deliberately create narratives that fit to make themselves more comfortable in a space that's not necessarily theirs or anybody's to begin with. You're talking about 14th Street, you're talking about Howard, and it's just like the cultural memory is changing because the demographics are changing. So it's very interesting to see it like play out and to see how these things like happen over time. And another thing that I was thinking about while y'all were talking, it's just like Kristian, you were talking about how we talk about this stuff all the time, and it's just like you just grow up hearing these things, and you just grow up hearing it all the time. It's like your neighbors talking about this, like Aunt Jemima. Like we knew that wasn't right, and I was like an 8-year-old. That wasn't right in my spirit because it's the way the people in my neighborhood was talking about her. So obviously, once I get to learn more about what she symbolized, of course it makes sense now. But it's just like we've been having these conversations, and I think I hear our history is so oral, and this is such a bigger part of what it means to be a Black person, is have these oral histories, and we're not treated as that is a valuable, part of retelling,
Yes, ma'am. We snap on the show when somebody's talking good. So we on your show, but I'm gonna snap anyway. Because that's real talk.
Yeah,
but it really is that, but and that's why I said it's, we talk about the talk, in the Black community, we talk about the talk, and we're not talking about the birds and the bees. We're talking about how you were to behave, towns you're not supposed to go through,
right?
What to do when you're stopped, all these different kinds of things. And I live in Texas, and I love that I'm from Texas. My family has roots here. I have roots of a family in Alabama, but we're in the South. And Texas was the last state to give up its slaves. Let's just be real. And so I'm like, do you understand the weight of that? Do you understand what that means? So to your point about, us having these conversations coming from Dallas, there's a lot of organizations here that are putting in the work. Right. They are putting in the work to have these conversations and to look at the history of the city and to contend with that and what that has meant for right now. And they're working hard on it. Everybody from theaters to whole organizations that absolutely, that's what they do. They do racial healing work. So it's definitely an interesting time. And I think it's I tell Quo all the time, and this is gonna sound country, but I'm a Southern girl, but this is where the rubber meets the road. I feel like this is where the rubber meets the road. So, and again, opera is not exempt. The arts are not exempt from these problems. Just because we create these beautiful long legato lines, and I don't know about y'all, but I still, my breath is taken away. Every single time I hear somebody sing a pianissimo and just float, I'm just like, somebody like Montserrat Caballé, her softs were ridiculous. Ridiculous. And we hear that and we see this beautiful thing being put before us on stage. But I always say we need to remember what it took to get there too, and who may have been left out of this.
Right.
Who's not been at the right now, who's been left out of it. So I think I think sometimes we get tricked because of the beauty because of the awesome power of it, you know what I mean? And because of the experience of it, you know, experience it in a hall live. But it's like, it can get on the stage too. These issues in society. And I also have to say again, you know, I know a lot of companies are working to diversify their stages, diversify their pits, you know, with the orchestra. But we need to do that in a calculated, nuanced way. And I'll let Quo explore
I
on
would say
that.
we need to do that in a sincere way, because everybody's so focused on diversity, and the goal is not diversity. The goal is to actually treat other people like human beings. The goal is to tell the truth. The goal is to share this art form with everyone, not share in that you own and you need to, you know, decide who you get to, you know, who gets to participate. No, this is co-creation. This is, I'm glad we are doing this together. We were talking about that last night. You get to the point where you're like, I'm so glad we are doing this together. And that's not the thing, because so often opera gets wrapped into this ideal place in society. You are the elite. For so long, it was you are the elite, or you had the ability to go to opera. Even in opera houses and the segregation that was practiced within those opera houses. If we don't rectify that, if we do not contend with that, if we don't face it, you can't just hop in somewhere and say, oh, yes, you're welcome now, but only within what I say, only within the stories that we want to hear, only within the roles that we want to see you play. And then it's a matter of, you spoke about how the DC, certain things are changing as demographics change. There should be no reason that history continues, right? There should be no reason that history does not continue. There should be no reason that history starts to change just because someone else came in, because it does not change what that place is, what that place has meant. It just means that you add on more value by the experiences of those who are there now. But so much of what we do in the United States is to erase the history that does not suit the majority. I was going to say suit us, suit the majority. The history that does not benefit those who have more resources, who have more decision-making power, who prefer to be comfortable, or who prefer their comfort over the truth. And so once we get to the point that we're realizing that in opera organizations, having a diverse stage is not enough.
Nope.
No.
Having staff is not enough. You have to live, breathe, you have to understand and value this just as much as you value putting opera on the stage, just as much as you value an even budget, right? Just as much as you value making sure that you're creating opportunities for more artists. This has to be within the center of the work that everyone is doing. But we have some people who are gung-ho about that and they're getting the work done, but then we still have people who are still on some performative, I checked that box, I'm done, let me keep going.
Of course, there's that Pokemon. I caught one. Gotta catch them all. I got one.
And then I tell them, and she's referring to, I always tell people, you can't treat people like Pokemon.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. You cannot treat people like Pokemon where you just, oh, okay, I called him, trying to catch them all, just so you can check every box. Oh, we have this person that represents this group and this race and this orientation and this identity. That's not what this is about.
Right.
Because
are you cultivating the environment
for them to be
there in your organization for them to be comfortable and included? Diversity and equity is great, but without inclusion, they mean nothing. So
even for them to be in the environment, they can be included, because it goes beyond inclusion to an extent, because it's not so much just including people in the environment. They have to have the ability and the opportunity to also lead in that environment.
Yep.
People are still coming from the perspective of, this is mine and I'm going to share it with you and I shall give these things to you. No, this is ours. How would you like to proceed?
Right.
Well, and it's the whole, you're invited to the table. You have a seat at the table. When you say that, all I hear is, it's still my table, but I'm inviting you to the table.
Right.
My table. So like Quo says, this is co-ownership. So how is inviting me to your table co-ownership? So it's when I say that, we did a show called Dismantle and Replace. And ultimately, I say it's about dismantling, because dismantling something without something to replace it is irresponsible.
Yeah.
But when we do replace it with something, let's replace it with something that makes it better, that dismantles the systems that do not serve the whole of us.
Right.
And there are some people that don't realize that the systems that we have in place have not served the whole of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been this awakening that swept across the field, and it's been interesting to say the least, but it also has been, I've been telling people it's been interesting, but and refreshing, but it's also been exhausting. I said, I've told people, I said, if you get a response from somebody where they say they do not want to talk about this, understand that it's not their job to educate you on this. If they look at you and say, Google it, you really can't be upset and mad about that. On top of that, what you have to understand is there are people who are contending with the fact that for 400 years, you thought we were lying about what was happening to us.
Just making it up.
It took a pandemic and you getting locked in your house for you to, and looking at a screen and seeing George Floyd rest his soul, miserably.
Just making it up because we just like to suffer.
We just really enjoy it. I'm just like, where have y'all been? Yeah. What are we not?
Yeah,
what are we missing
exactly.
That you cannot see that this is wrong. And that's why I love educating people, and I love dispelling myths and all kinds of stuff.
Same.
But like you said, it is tiring. It's like, does that look right to you? Does that feel good? I mean, does that literally, does it feel good to you for you to be looking at Colonel Sanders and he looked like a freaking slave owner? That don't seem right to you? That don't seem like that's something that's probably not good. And then you got antebellum commercials selling fried chicken. That don't seem wrong, but that's neither here nor there. I guess we getting on the good.
Who was it? I don't remember what company it was. Was it Amazon that served their employees chicken and waffles on Juneteenth? And I'm like,
listen, I like chicken and waffles.
But how deaf can you be? Literally,
who I did that? They couldn't have it
any other day.
You have to laugh. And I tell people sometimes I have to laugh at just how ludicrous it really is, because it's like, this is absurd.
Mm-mm.
It's absurd, and you have to laugh, because I know I don't mean to be laughing, but I said it's so deeply rooted that even when you're trying to do something good for your employees, you still do something that's out of pocket.
Just don't make no sense. I mean, just doesn't make no sense. But and
that's why.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I always tell people that this is gonna look and feel different.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to look and feel different. We cannot address these issues. We cannot correct these issues as we are now. People have to unlearn, relearn, and then learn some more things. We can't just go about it with, I'm going to use my current skill set the way that I've been taught. The way you've been taught is most likely rooted in racism. Mm-hmm. And so don't do that. Even, like you say, even when you try to do something, it's like, chicken and waffles. Why? What would make you think, okay, well, I see why. You're going to say that those were not your intentions, but impact is more important than intent. So your intentions don't really, they're for you, not for me. And so it's a matter of also getting people to understand. Kristian says that we all got duped. That's how she says it, that we all lost something. And for a lot of people, you lost the ability to see other people as human beings. Yes. You lost the ability to look up and say, this is wrong. What can we do to fix it? Right. Because so often we come with the buts, right? It's Black Lives Matter, but no, Black Lives Matter, period. That's it. Not saying that just Black Lives Matter, but in this statement right here, it's either true or false. It's either true or false. Yes or no. There's no but.
Well, and I say to Quo all the time,
wrong.
I'm like,
there is no but.
I say all the time, I said, but it's insulting for you to come up to me and say all lives matter, like I don't realize and know that. But right now, those are not the lives that are being affected.
Right.
If I go into a parking lot and I see you go, that's my car, somebody's breaking into it, and I go, all cars matter.
Right. Well,
but wait a minute, mine is the one that's being burglarized. What? My windows are broken, but that red sedan to you, it matters too. You know, I mean, you're gonna want to you're gonna want to take a tire iron or something to my head for doing that to
For
you.
even thinking that.
You know, I know all cars matter. Dial 911. You know, like it, and I need people to understand that when you say that, and you know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, we have a pandemic on our hand, and racism did not take a break.
Right. Not
in fact, in the pandemic, who's COVID killing the most right now?
Exactly.
Who's dying from it? Black and brown folks. And so we need to understand, I think people need to understand, and it's, again, it is not, we have a time right now, we have a pause right now to really do some examination in the field, in our world, in our organizations, in our businesses, whatever it is. We have it in our offices, in our cubicles, in our virtual spaces. We have a chance right now to take a pause and say, what has not been suiting the whole of us?
Right.
And how can we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important that we take advantage of that.
Yeah. Because, like,
particularly as it relates to this subject.
Right. Everybody's on equal playing field now. Like, ain't nobody working. So it's like, if we all on this equal playing field, can we restructure? Can we create a whole new foundation that's going to be strong enough for different people to, like, because I want young opera singers, especially young Black opera singers, to buy into the art and feel like they have a place here, because they do, because people have been doing it for so long.
Yes.
And
have been, and they purposely left out of the history books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't. It's Rosalind Story, author who wrote the book, And So I Sing, where she talks about, you know, Black singers and stuff in opera, you know. And when I first read that book, I was like, like I knew about some of the but when she was going back to the 1800s, you know, earlier than that, I was like,
wow, yeah,
you know, mind blown. And that's why I say racism divides us. It seeks to rob us of things. And Quo says it all the time. It divides us and it seeks to rob us of things. I say you get robbed when you're in a room full of people and you have a hang up with somebody because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
You know, or you don't hire that person to sing this role because they don't fit what you're looking for. But they just sang the tar, sang everybody in the room under the table, everybody outside the door lined up under the table, but they don't fit the aesthetic. Now, I know there are business decisions and stuff that have to be made when it comes to costuming and all that stuff. It's not pleasant, okay? But we have to look at what happened that got us to the point of having to do that as well.
Right.
And in this country, you can go back and you can look at everything and find out what it's rooted in. And it's the one thing that this country has refused to contend with. What they refuse to contend with, Quo?
Racism. The lie, the fallacy of racial hierarchy.
Racial human hierarchy.
Right.
And white supremacy. That's what we refuse to look up and say that we have gotten where we are because we believe that some people's lives matter more than others based on the color of their skin.
Right.
Based on where they're from, based on whomever their parents were, and those things. We refuse to actually pay attention to that and then to dismantle it. Because as Kristian said, like you get robbed. Even in opera, we have this beautiful ability to make this beautiful music, this beautiful storytelling, but we fall short, truly. Even with what we've been able to do, we fall short because we only tell certain stories. We only tell stories from certain perspectives.
Right.
And then we only allow certain people in the room to help tell the story. And it's fascinating, truly. But it's just this matter of realizing these things and then taking them apart and then saying no more and removing them. There's no reason for it anymore. All of the excuses that are in place, there's no reason for them anymore because at the end of the day, we're making this art together. We're making this music together. You got your part, I got my part. We do these things so that we can make it together. And when you're missing voices, you don't complete the harmony, right? When you're missing it, you don't complete the texture. And we've been missing that in opera for so long. So it is beyond time.
Right.
It's past time, as Kristian would say, for us to get it together.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I just to her point about, it being past time, that's another thing when I say, when you go and ask somebody, can you tell me about your experiences? And they go, I'm tired. You know what I mean? And you have to understand that when you get that response, where it's coming from, we have been having these conversations. We've had to live through this stuff.
Right.
We've been talking about this and trying to get the word out about it and then have a conversation for it and trying to seek change. We've had people that have walked through the doors. We are people who have had to survive, through all innumerable types of pain and suffering. But there's a beauty in that, because imagine how much more powerful it would be. I'll put it this way. We did an interview with Jerry Hawkins, who is Dallas Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation. He's the executive director for that. And I asked him why looking into history was so important. And but the thing is, it was the old adage of you have to know where you come from to know where you're going. You want to look back, and it's the same. My fascination with history and music history is the same way. I want to look back and see what happened and say, okay, what good happened there?
Right.
Okay, let's try to do some more of that. And what terrible thing happened there, and let's not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people who just say, well, don't get caught up on the past. Everybody's face just we almost made the same face. But why are you living in the past? And I'm like, no, I'm very much living in the present.
Mm-hmm.
The past is affecting my present, and again, the arts are not exempt from this. They're not. So, it's funny because I know you sent us a list of questions. And I don't know if we hit on any of them yet. Did we hit on any of them yet?
It's okay. You could just edit.
Yeah.
We like to talk.
Yeah.
Kristian
If something doesn't suit, you just take it out. I'm like, how long does your show usually run?
They gonna listen to this, honey. They're gonna get this lesson.
But I will say this. I see things starting to change.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my own backyard, as I said, I've witnessed just what the work in our own organization. I've seen minds change, or minds be open, and people go like, I had no idea. Like, they really are like, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. And that's to Quo's credit. That's her laying the groundwork, for something like this. And I always talk about, because people say, this seems daunting. It just seems so, it's so heavy. It's just literally in everything,
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask Quo, I said, well, in this kind of work, it can seem daunting. What's the positive thing that we can do? What are the positive things about this particular work?
Right.
And she always reminds everybody that we can do this together. Mm-hmm. You're not alone. There are organizations doing this kind of work. If you don't know how to do it on your own, find those organizations and individuals who do know how to do it, and then start getting ready to train and make some change.
Mm-hmm. And then know that you won't be able to do it on your own. So no matter how much you know, how much you've experienced, how much education, we're not meant to do this alone. So if you're trying to go it alone, you're doing it wrong. You're wrong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's meant to create community. It's meant to build community, because our nation is not about community, truly. Mm-hmm. We're not about making sure that we care about others and that we put things in place to ensure that we care about self and others. So in doing this, we have to make sure that we are doing this together, which is kind of the approach that we made sure we want to take in creating the show. Mm-hmm. I mentioned that David was like, we want you to have a show, go do your own thing. He was very excited about the things that we would be talking about, no matter what. He just said, I know y'all are going to be passionate. I want y'all to be up there. Mm-hmm. So we're like, cool. And so we have to sit and decide, what are the requirements if we're doing this?
Right.
And letting everybody know that if we are to create a show if we're to create a web series, then we control the content. We'll talk about whatever we want to talk about. You don't get to tell us what we're going to talk about. But between the two of us, we want to make sure that we spoke about topics and issues or anything that we see in the arts, and then how that extends to education, how that extends to the economy, how that extends to wellness, to health, to social issues, because they're all there, and opera is not exempt from that. So we wanted to show the part of opera that people don't often see. And I don't mean just the backstage, really cool things that are happening to create the art. I mean the heart, the mental status, the mental drive, the kind of moral drive that goes into creating opera, and showing some of the issues within those things, and then having conversations about it, and then inviting everybody else into the conversation so we can find out how we correct these things together, or how we support what's already working, how we support those things, and how we do all of it together. So that was one of the things we wanted to make sure, or some of the things we wanted to make sure were in place for Taking the Stage with Kristian Quo. And even in the title of the show, Taking the Stage, no, this is a takeover. This is a takeover, because stop these things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and the other thing that I always, and we talk about often on the show, is handling things with grace and respect, and handling things in a way that reduces harm. Quo says that all the time, to reduce harm. Not do no harm, reduces harm, because, there are things that are going to come out of a conversation that might hit somebody differently, and you're like, oh, that one kind of hurt. But the point is to make sure that it's an environment that's more healing,
Right.
Not accusations, no name calling, that sort of thing. We want it to be, I want it to be a productive resource, people to come and engage and to talk and ask questions. We won't get anywhere if you're not, personally for me, I don't think we can get anywhere unless people are willing to come into the space and have a conversation about it. And so it's important that we created that and cultivated that together. And in the beginning of this, we did an entire introductory show talking about all this, and I've just been amazed at some of the conversations we've had and people that we've had on that we've gotten to know even better, people we've been working alongside, in many cases, and learning different things about them. And that's what it's about for me. I don't want to sit around with I don't know about anybody else, but sit around with malice and hatred and all that kind of stuff. Man, that stuff will eat you alive.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. I really don't. There's enough things to eat you alive in this life. So if I can be a part of something that helps to solve some of that, then that is motivation enough for me.
I love it. I feel like we hit all the questions, even though I didn't ask them. And it's definitely been, one of my favorite interviews, because it's less work on me. But just to end out, I guess the last question I have is like a signature question, is if you could write an opera, what would it be about?
I've often thought about writing one based on the life of Hattie McDaniel.
Okay.
Just because of the journey that she had to go on and the barriers that she had to break. And, in part of contending with American history, we need to talk about all of, not America, United States history. And we need to talk about all of it. So I think that we need to be telling stories that are native to us, using the music that we created here.
Right.
Yep. Where did jazz come from? I'll wait. Things like that. So, I would want to do it in a tonal language that was reflective, of the U.S. And I just find her life so fascinating. And anybody that was a pioneer in that way, Marian Anderson down in Houston Grand Opera, they just had the premiere the the opera about Marian Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first came onto Dallas Opera, that's what I was hired to in the education and outreach department to do a one-woman show written by then director of education Marjorie Anderson Clive, and to portray Marian in schools.
Wow.
And when I found out Houston was doing it, I thought it was fantastic because, you know, I like to tell the stories of people whose shoulders on which I stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell stories about Black people that don't involve so much tragedy. I had to tell somebody, I said, Black people fall in love. You know, our Mexican brothers and sisters fall in love. Our indigenous brothers and sisters, they fall in love. You know, we have love stories.
Right.
We have stories of triumph and victory that are not just rooted in the pain that the systems in this country control.
Right.
Or the
So those are the types of stories I would want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I'd write an opera, opera about, it'd be an adventure.
Okay.
My opera would be an adventure that kind of touches on self-reflection, journey, self, right? Triumph, going from the typical story. Opera normally takes kind of this typical approach to storytelling, but kind of having that whole process of self-awareness and growth from, you know, initial whatever that is that rocks your world, and then going through the process of deciding whether or not it's something you want to approach, something you want to conquer, attempting to conquer, failing, going again, doing it again. I don't have a particular person I'd like to focus on for the opera. I would want this opera to show the possibilities, to show what can happen going forward. I would want this opera to show people what it is like when you choose to conquering over being comfortable, and when you choose centering others within who you are, when you choose to make space for others within yourself, and then when you choose to hold and command your own space whenever necessary. So my opera would be an adventure. It would not be a whole cycle of 4-hour operas. Thanks, Wagner. We don't need great music, but
people need the intermission, sir. Please, people have to use the restroom.
But it would tell the story in a way that has not been told before, with the assumptions of who the hero is, what it means to be a hero, what makes you a hero, and then who the villains are, and the assumption that it's always others, or that we are trying to focus on one particular story or one particular group, or tell the story of, I think we're getting enough of those, and as we get more, I would want mine to take us to kind of the next level. What else is out there? What else are we needing to conquer? So that's what my opera would be about.
That sounds really cool. I love this. I wish we had a composer. I wish I had like a composer on staff and be like, here, go and write these right quick. So we can premiere 2022.
Yeah, just like a little workshop.
You should talk to Nia Franklin, Miss America 2019.
Oh, yeah. She does have that. Right. She has a composer platform.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we got to get on it.
Indeed.
So where can we find you guys?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, most definitely. You can find us also on Dallas Opera's TDO Network page, and also on YouTube on Dallas Opera's network page as well, or channel.
Pretty much everything she said. Pretty much everything she said. Yes. If you're wanting to contact us directly, just DM us and go from there. I'm not too particular about who contacts me about what. The revolution is now, and it will not be televised. So just go ahead. It's okay.
Or it might be. Who knows?
No, in this day and age. All right. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.